"You don't deserve Grandpa's legacy, you're just a parasite in heels," my sister hissed before slapping me so hard her diamond ring drew blood. The room froze. Then my father clapped proud of her cruelty. My mother sipped her wine and smirked. That's the moment I realized this wasn't family anymore, and they had no idea I was about to drop evidence that would burn their perfect little empire to the ground. Have you ever been betrayed by the very people who should have had your back? Let me know in the comments and tap like if you've ever felt the sting of family turning against you. What happened next in my story will leave you speechless. When my parents divorced, I was 8. My mom, Diane, got full custody. My dad, Craig, moved 2 towns over and started a new family. He visited sometimes, but it felt more like an obligation than love. My older sister, Amanda, she's 2 years ahead of me, stayed close with Mom. She was always the golden child, straight A's debate team, Captain Ivy League dreams. And me, I was the quiet one. I liked building things, fixing things, understanding how they worked. The only person who really got that was my grandfather, my mom's dad, Joe. Grandpa Joe ran a small hardware store called Carpenter's Corner. He'd owned it for over 40 years, and it sat right behind the little white house he lived in. Every weekend in summer, he'd have me over. Not Amanda, she said it smelled like dust and old metal, but me, I loved every inch of that place. I remember the creaky wood floors, the little bell above the door, and how he always had a bowl of peppermint candies by the register. He'd toss me one every time I helped a customer find something. It was with him that I learned what it meant to show up, to take pride in small things, to be reliable. He'd let me organize shelves, paint signs, repair broken tools. But what he really did was make me feel seen. While Amanda was getting trophies, I was in the back office sitting at a clunky old desktop computer, trying to teach myself how to code. I didn't understand half of it back then, but Grandpa would peek in, watch the screen flicker, and say, "That's your future, Bree. You've got a mind that sees the angles." At home, it was different. Mom used to roll her eyes when I tried explaining what I was building. "Why don't you focus on something real?" she'd say. My dad, on his rare visits, would echo the same thing, coding. "Come on, kid. Learn something useful." Amanda didn't even pretend to hide her amusement. I still remember her waving a report card in my face, smirking while I tried to hide a C in algebra. But Grandpa Joe, he was different. He made space for me, literally and emotionally. He gave me an old toolbox with my initials carved in, let me paint a tech help sign to hang in the store window even though I was just a teenager. And when I said I wanted to go to California to start something of my own, he was the only one who didn't try to stop me. The night before I left town at 24, he called me into the workshop. He looked tired, older than usual, but his eyes were still sharp. He handed me an envelope. Inside was $5,000. I froze. "That's from the store," he said. "My savings. I want you to build something that matters." It was the first time I ever saw him tear up. We hugged, and I left for San Jose in a beat-up Honda with everything I owned, and $5,000 from the only person who ever believed in me without needing proof. Those first few years in Silicon Valley were brutal. I shared an apartment with 3 roommates, took side gigs fixing websites and setting up Wi-Fi routers for cafes, cried in public more than once. But I kept building. Eventually, I created a small inventory app. Nothing fancy, just something that helps small stores like Grandpa's keep track of stock. I named the first version Corner Track because of Carpenter's Corner. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked, and it caught on. By the time I turned 30, I'd grown that tiny app into a company called BuildBridge. We had 27 employees, served hundreds of small businesses, and had secured our second round of funding. I was exhausted, but I was proud. Through it all, I called Grandpa Joe every Sunday, without fail. He didn't always understand what I was doing, but he cared. He'd say things like, "My granddaughter builds things with invisible tools," and brag to his customers that I was the brains behind those phone apps. Amanda barely mentioned me. When she did, it was usually with a link to some article about startup crashes or tech layoffs. She had graduated law school, joined a big firm, and moved into a 6-bedroom house with her husband, Richard. Richard was in real estate development, always talking about projects and investors, but rarely making anything last. I never held it against them. I just stayed in my lane. About a year ago, Grandpa's health started to decline. Our Sunday calls got shorter. He seemed more tired, more confused. I asked if I should fly home, but he brushed it off. "You're doing important work, Bree," he'd say. "I'm just slowing down. I should have insisted." And I didn't. I thought there'd be more time. 6 months ago, my mom called. Grandpa Joe had died in his sleep. I remember sitting on the floor of my office phone, still in my hand, staring at nothing. I flew home that night. The funeral was full of people from the neighborhood, people he'd helped over the years, customers who'd become friends. I stood with my family, but I felt like a stranger. Amanda gave the eulogy. Her voice cracked at all the right moments. My mom held her hand. My dad nodded solemnly. No one asked me to speak. After the service, we went to the lawyer's office. That's when the shock came. Grandpa's will left everything, his house, his savings, and Carpenter's Corner, to Amanda. Not split between us, not even shared, just her. I got a check for $10,000 and a line about her sister already being successful in her own right. I didn't say anything. I didn't scream or cry. But something inside me shifted. Not because of the money. I didn't need the money. But because it didn't make sense. Grandpa had always told me the store would be mine. We talked about updates online, ordering, making it hybrid. Part tradition, part future. Why would he change everything without a word? I flew back to California the next morning, but I didn't unpack. For days, I moved through work like a ghost, showing up to meetings, giving updates, reviewing code. But I wasn't really there. I couldn't get that moment out of my head. The lawyer sliding the folder across the table, Amanda, glancing at me with that practiced look of grief and control. My mom and dad nodding along like it was all reasonable. The store Carpenter's Corner wasn't just property. It was a promise. Grandpa and I had talked about it for years. He'd always said, "One day this will be yours, Bree. You'll keep it alive in your own way." He used to ask about modern inventory systems online, ordering, even branding. We made plans. And now I was supposed to believe that without warning, he changed his mind. Just like that, I couldn't. At first, I told myself to let it go. He was gone. I was financially stable. The store was just a building. But that thought felt hollow. It wasn't about the money. It was about something deeper: integrity, intention, respect. Something didn't sit right. And that feeling tight in my chest, always humming under the surface, wouldn't leave me alone. So I started asking quiet questions. I didn't confront Amanda. I didn't storm into anyone's office. I started with people I knew. Grandpa had trusted Mr. Lang from the church, Lisa from the bakery next door, Mr. Rubin, who ran the hardware store's back office when I was a kid. What I heard disturbed me. Apparently, Amanda had become very involved in Grandpa's affairs during the last few months of his life. She visited him frequently, took him to appointments, handled his medications, even managed some of his bank accounts. To the outside world, it looked like the perfect picture of a devoted granddaughter stepping up during a hard time. But there were cracks. Lisa mentioned that she hadn't been allowed to visit during those final weeks, said Amanda told her Grandpa was too tired for company. Mr. Lang said the same. So did two of Grandpa's oldest fishing buddies. They all noticed the same thing: Amanda controlling access, deciding who got to see him, when, for how long. That's when I knew I had to dig deeper. I contacted a private investigator, Thornton and Associates, reputable, quiet professional. I explained everything: his sudden change of will, the timing, Amanda's increased involvement. They agreed to take the case, but warned me elder abuse and undue influence are hard to prove, especially after death, especially when family is involved. But I had to try. While the investigators did their work, I kept mine quiet. I didn't mention it to my team, didn't even tell my closest friends. I just waited. And slowly, piece by piece, the story started to unravel. Turns out Amanda had taken legal control over some of Grandpa's finances just 3 months before he passed. She'd set up a medical power of attorney. On paper, it looked legit. But when the investigator pulled medical records from Sunny Pines, the assisted living facility Grandpa had moved to, things got murky. 2 weeks before the new will was signed, Grandpa had been put on heavy pain medication, including morphine for chronic back pain. Not unusual for someone his age, but the side effects included confusion, memory loss, and reduced decision-making capacity. Nurse logs from that time included notes like disoriented repeating questions and uncertain of date time. One entry dated exactly 2 days before the will change read, "Patient believes it is 1994, refused breakfast, asked repeatedly where his daughter passed away in 2006. It was clear. His mental state had deteriorated significantly, and yet somehow Amanda had convinced him to sign over the store, the house, everything to her. I kept digging. The investigators obtained a copy of the will including Grandpa's signature. We sent it to a handwriting expert. Their conclusion wasn't definitive, but it raised eyebrows. The signature showed signs of guided execution, meaning someone may have helped hold his hand while signing. When I saw that phrase in the report, I felt sick. What made it worse? Around the same time, Amanda was spending hours at Grandpa's side. Her husband Richard's name popped up on a completely different track. Through public records, we found emails, property filings, and planning board minutes about a new mixed-use development in town Prestige Corner. The proposed project included retail stores on the bottom and luxury condos above. One of the parcels listed Carpenter's Corner. They were planning it before Grandpa even died. It all made sense now. Amanda wasn't being generous or selfless. She was securing the final piece of a real estate puzzle. Grandpa wasn't her priority. The store was. And not to preserve it, but to flip it. The betrayal sat in my stomach like lead. I printed everything. The medical records, the will analysis, the planning documents. I even had statements from 2 store employees who said Amanda had barely set foot in the place in over a decade until suddenly she was there every week, asking questions, poking around the books, making herself known. It wasn't just shady. It felt intentional. I thought about confronting her, just calling her up, laying it all out. But something told me to wait. I wanted the right moment, the right setting, where there'd be no running, no twisting the story, no fake tears or forced smiles. Then the invitation came, an email from Amanda. Subject line, time to reconnect. She was hosting a family dinner at her house that Saturday. Said it had been too long since we were all together, that we should heal old wounds, that Grandpa would have wanted it. I stared at the message for a long time. She thought I didn't know. She thought I'd moved on. But I hadn't. And I wasn't going to. That's when I packed the folder, the file of everything I'd gathered over 6 months. I placed it carefully into my briefcase, slid in a voice recorder, a backup drive, extra copies. I wasn't coming for revenge. I was coming for the truth. And I knew the perfect setting, her table, her house, her audience. Let her think she's in control, for now. Amanda's house looked exactly like her emails read, strategic, polished, and desperately trying to project power. It was a massive colonial-style place tucked into the most expensive corner of town. White column stone driveway, perfect hedges. 3 luxury SUVs sat in the curved drive like trophies. My rented Prius looked like a mistake parked out front. As I stepped out, briefcase in hand, I caught my reflection in the car window. Gray blazer, clean lines, no jewelry, just the bare minimum. I wasn't here to impress anyone. I was here for clarity, closure. Amanda opened the door within seconds of my knocking, wearing a form-fitting navy dress heels that probably cost more than most monthly rents, and a smile so perfectly fake I could practically see the seams. "Brianna," she said, drawing the word out like we were close. She leaned in, kissed the air near my cheek, and stepped back. "You look professional." "You look expensive," I replied evenly. She laughed like it was a compliment, then stepped aside. "Everyone's already in the living room." The house was staged like a lifestyle magazine shoot, abstract art gleaming floors air that smelled faintly of lavender and lemon polish. She led me past a grand staircase into a space with white leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows, and zero warmth. My parents sat stiffly on one of the couches. My mom clutched a wine glass in both hands. My dad stood as I entered, gave me a quick nod, then sat back down like a man avoiding conflict. Richard, Amanda's husband, walked in a moment later with a tray of drinks and a smug smile. The tech genius returns, he said, handing me a glass without asking what I wanted. Still selling invisible products for real money, I smiled without showing teeth. Still over-leveraging developments you don't have permits for. That wiped the smirk off his face for a second, but Amanda stepped in quickly. Let's keep it light tonight. This is about family. Sure it was. She offered up a few bland comments about her kids, how Taylor and Jordan were upstairs, but leaving soon for a sleepover. They just wanted to say hello, she added, like this was a Christmas card shoot. The kids appeared just long enough to smile awkwardly, hug everyone but me, then disappear with a nanny I hadn't seen enter. As the door closed behind them, the air changed. It felt like a stage was being cleared. Amanda turned back to us. Dinner should be ready shortly. The housekeeper prepped everything before leaving. I wanted tonight to be intimate. Translation, no witnesses. The dining room was massive. A long mahogany table set for 5 crystal glasses, cloth napkins, a centerpiece of white lilies and candles. It was too elegant for what was supposedly a casual reunion. Every detail screamed curation. We took our seats. Amanda naturally took the head. Richard sat to her right. My parents filled in, leaving me the chair across from Amanda, exactly where she wanted me. Center stage. Let's start, she said, lifting her glass with a toast to new beginnings. I clinked my glass, but didn't drink. The first course arrived some overpriced salad with edible flowers and shaved whatever. No one really ate. Conversation drifted through safe topics, the weather, real estate prices. My mom asked about California in that tone people use when they hope you'll say it's overrated. Then came the pivot. So my mother said lightly, "Have you thought about moving back?" I raised an eyebrow. "Back where here? Of course," she said. "It'd be nice to have both our daughters in town." Amanda jumped in without missing a beat. I told her you'd be too busy for small town life. Tech royalty and all. I sipped my water. Actually, I've been thinking about establishing more roots here, especially now that Grandpa's gone. Someone has to protect his legacy. Amanda blinked. For a fraction of a second, something shifted in her face. Then she smiled. "I couldn't agree more," she said. "That's actually part of why I invited you. Here it comes." She reached for a napkin, folded it slowly like she needed something to do with her hands. "I've decided to sell Carpenter's Corner." There it was. I looked up, careful to show no reaction. "The store is outdated," she continued. "The building needs major repairs. It's no longer sustainable. Richard's firm has a plan to revitalize that entire block. Mixed-use development, retail on the ground floor, luxury condos above. It's the future." "Prestige Corner," Richard added proudly. My fork hovered over my plate. "That's clever, naming it after your company." He shrugged. "We're finalizing drawings now. With Carpenter's as the final piece, the timeline moves up fast." I glanced at Amanda. Grandpa always said the store should stay in the family. Amanda's smile turned brittle. Well, he changed his mind. Right before he died, he realized it needed to go to someone present, someone who understood the neighborhood, who also happened to be married to the developer, I said calmly. My mom shifted in her chair. My dad reached for his wine. Amanda leaned forward. "This isn't personal, Brianna. It's business. The store's value is in the land. We're doing what's best for everyone. Everyone except the employees," I said. "The customers. The community." Richard waved a hand. "We'll offer severance. It's not like people can't buy hammers at Home Depot." Amanda smirked. "Honestly, I didn't expect you to get sentimental. Isn't tech all about disruption?" I set down my fork. Disruption and deception aren't the same. My dad tried to step in. "Sweetheart, it's what progress looks like. Property values will rise. Young families will move in and erase the one place Grandpa cared most about." Amanda exhaled sharply. "You left. You haven't lived here in 10 years. You don't get to weigh in now." I stayed calm. "I spoke to several store employees recently," I said. They said you hadn't stepped foot in the place for years until suddenly you were showing up every week." Amanda went still. I continued slowly. "You started asking about the books, inventory, operations, all within 3 months of Grandpa's decline. Convenient timing." Richard shifted in his seat. "Brianna, you're reading too much into." And right before that, I interrupted you had the store added to Prestige's development plans. 2 months before Grandpa passed. Amanda's face was tight now. He made his decision. I nodded. Maybe, or maybe someone made it for him. Silence fell across the table. I could see it, the cracks forming. Richard's hand went to his watch. My mom looked down at her plate. My dad tapped his glass absent-mindedly. They were nervous. I wasn't even done yet. I leaned back, calm, measured. "I'm just curious," I said, "why no one thought to include me in these plans, or even mention them." "You all knew how much Grandpa and I talked about the store," Amanda snapped. "You called him," she said. "You didn't live here. You didn't sit with him when he forgot who he was, when he cried in the middle of the night. You weren't here." "I offered to move him near me," I replied. He never knew that offer was real. Richard tried to interject again, but Amanda raised her hand. "You abandoned him." "No," I said softly. "You isolated him, and I can prove it." Her jaw clenched. She realized it now. This wasn't just emotional. This wasn't just me lashing out. This was something else entirely. Control was slipping through her fingers, and she didn't even know yet what I had in my briefcase. Amanda's knuckles whitened around her wine glass. "You think you can come back here after a decade and accuse us of what lying, manipulating Grandpa I didn't answer? I didn't need to." The silence did enough. She leaned forward, voice tight. "We took care of him. We were here." "You were here," I said calmly, "right after Richard's latest project went under, right when Prestige needed a cash infusion. That timing's interesting, don't you think?" Her eyes narrowed. "Watch it." Richard shifted beside her, jaw tense. He hadn't said a word since the last round. He was calculating, always was. Amanda was the emotional one. Richard played chess. I turned slightly to him. "When did you first draft the Prestige corner, plans before or after Amanda got Grandpa's signature on that new will?" He shook his head. "That has nothing to do with you." "That's where you're wrong," I said. "It has everything to do with me." My mom let out a sharp breath like she couldn't stand the rising tension. "Can we not do this right now?" I looked at her. "Do what? Ask questions." She lowered her voice. "It's a family dinner." "No," I said. "It's a press conference in disguise." Amanda pushed back from the table. "You're being dramatic." I tilted my head. "And you're being defensive." There was a moment where nobody moved. The silverware sat untouched. The food had gone cold. It wasn't a dinner anymore. It was a standoff. Then Amanda did something unexpected. She laughed. It wasn't warm. It wasn't amused. It was the kind of laugh someone lets out when they're cornered and trying to pretend they're not. "You always thought you were so special," she said, eyes sharp. "Even when we were kids. Grandpa's little genius, his little builder, his precious Bree." I said nothing. "You left. You ran off to California and started playing with apps and startups and investor buzzwords. You weren't here when he stopped remembering people's names. You weren't the one cleaning up after him when he wet the bed." I stayed quiet, not because I didn't have something to say, but because she wasn't done. "You think calling him on Sundays made you a hero, that some fancy tech company means you earned something. You weren't the one who sat there and watched him disappear one day at a time." My mom nodded along as if Amanda's words unlocked permission to join in. Amanda gave up so much for him. She rearranged her entire schedule. She also got everything in the will, I said flatly. Amanda's voice rose, "Because I was the one who showed up." Richard muttered, "And here we go." "No," Amanda snapped, turning to him. "Let me say it." She turned back to me. Her voice was low, raw. "He never talked about you the way he did when you weren't around. You don't know what it's like to sit in a room with someone who can't remember your birthday, but asks again and again when Bree's coming home." Her voice cracked on that last word. She took a shaky breath and covered it with a sip of wine. "That must have been hard," I said. "But none of that explains why you shut everyone else out, why his friends couldn't visit, why the nurse records show that his medication schedule was altered. The same week the new will was signed." Amanda froze. It was small, but I saw it. Her fingers clenched the base of the wine glass just a little too hard. She recovered quickly. He was lucid enough to know what he wanted, and what he wanted was to leave the store to someone who respected it. "You didn't even like the store growing up," I said. "You called it a shack. You mocked Grandpa's tool collection. You said it smelled like rust and regret." Richard cut in. "You're both being ridiculous. The store's old. The development is good for the community. Amanda did what any smart person would do." I turned toward him. Smart or desperate? His jaw twitched. My dad finally spoke. "Bree, sweetheart, I think you're getting carried away." I looked at him. "You always say that when things get uncomfortable. We're just saying—" He paused, unsure how to finish. My mom jumped in. "You're so quick to assume the worst about us. We're your family." "Funny," I said. "You didn't sound like family when you laughed at Amanda's toast." They looked confused. I clarified the one where she called me a parasite in heels. Silence. My dad cleared his throat. "That was a joke." "No," I said. "It was a warning shot. You were all testing how far I'd go." I glanced at Amanda. "You miscalculated." Her voice had dropped again, controlled, cold. "You don't scare me, Bree." "I don't need to," I said. "I just need the truth to scare you." She stood abruptly. Her chair scraped loud against the floor. "Get out!" I didn't move. She walked around the table fast. In a flash, she was next to me, and then before I could process it, her palm connected with my face. The slap echoed. The sting was immediate, sharp, hot, then numb. I touched my cheek. No one stopped her. No one spoke. Then I heard it clapping. My father. 2 slow, sarcastic claps. About time someone shut her up. My mother sipped her wine and added softly, "Maybe now you'll learn some respect." Richard glanced at his watch. "You've got 5 minutes to leave," he said. "Frankly, I'd have given you less." I looked around the room. The people who raised me, the sister I once looked up to, the man who married into this chaos and helped orchestrate it. They all looked the same, smug, secure, convinced they had won. I smiled. It wasn't wide, it wasn't cruel, it was quiet, controlled, and it terrified them more than anything I'd said all night, because they hadn't noticed the briefcase under my chair, and they had no idea what was inside. I reached down slowly and pulled the briefcase up onto the table. Amanda's face shifted. Not fear, not yet, but unease. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice suddenly quieter. I didn't answer. I unlatched the case and opened it. Inside was the file. 6 months of quiet work, every document carefully labeled, every photo and email indexed. I slid the folder out and laid it flat on the linen tablecloth, pushing aside the untouched dessert plates and crystal glasses. "You said I had 5 minutes," I said calmly. "That's all I need." Richard straightened in his chair. "You're bluffing." I looked at him. "Am I?" I opened the folder and spread out the first sheet. Grandpa's amended will. "This is the version signed 2 weeks before he died," I said. "The one that gave Amanda everything." Amanda crossed her arms. "Everyone's seen it. It's legal. It was witnessed." I slid the next page forward. "This is an expert handwriting analysis. The signature on the new will shows signs of assisted execution, specifically a second hand guiding his pen. That's not just suspicious. That's a red flag for probate fraud." Amanda's eyes narrowed. He was old. I helped him hold the pen. "That's not illegal. Except," I said, turning the page, "you never mentioned that before. And neither did the witnesses." Richard opened his mouth, but I kept going. "These," I said, laying down more pages, "are medical records from Sunny Pines, the assisted living facility Grandpa moved to. They show he was on morphine and other medications known to cause cognitive decline. 2 days before the will was signed, nurses documented him, confusing decades, misplacing names, believing his long-deceased sister was still alive. My mother's voice trembled. "That's private." "I obtained them legally," I replied. "Under California elder protection statutes, when financial exploitation is suspected by a next of kin, those records become admissible." Amanda laughed nervously. "You really think this means anything? People change wills all the time." I nodded. "They do. But let's talk about context." I reached for the next sheet. "This is a sworn statement from Marie Jenkins. She was Grandpa's primary nurse. She says you specifically requested his cognitive medication be skipped the morning the lawyer came, claimed it would make him more alert. But he ended up barely remembering what year it was." Amanda's mouth opened slightly. "You're lying," she said, but her voice had lost confidence. I pulled out a flash drive and slid it across the table. "Here's security footage showing you entering his room before the lawyer arrived and again afterward. Both times unaccompanied. Both times staying for over 20 minutes. Richard now looked visibly uncomfortable. I was helping, Amanda said. He asked me to." "Funny," I said. "Because according to his personal recorder, the one I gave him years ago to record family stories, he was confused why you were suddenly bringing up changing the will." I pressed play on the small digital recorder. Grandpa's voice, scratchy but familiar, filled the room. April 3rd. "Amanda came again today. She keeps talking about the store, says it should go to someone local. I told her it's meant for Brianna. She got upset, said Bree doesn't care. That's not true. Bree cares more than anyone." I pressed stop. Silence. My mother wiped her eyes. My father looked away. Amanda was frozen. I pulled out one more document. This, I said, is an email from Richard to his project manager, dated 3 months before Grandpa died. It reads, "Amanda says the old man is weakening. Once we get control of the property, move forward with phase 2. Keep plans ready." Richard turned red. That was out of context. "No," I said. It was the context. I stood up, slowly placing my palms on the table. "I've submitted all of this to the district attorney. They've opened an investigation into undue influence and elder fraud. Probate court has also been petitioned to invalidate the amended will." Amanda's voice cracked. "You can't do this. I already did." Richard stood too, knocking over his wine glass. "You want a payout? Is that what this is?" I stared at him. "I don't want your money. I want Grandpa's truth back." My mom reached for me across the table. "Think about what this will do to us. The family, Amanda's career. She made her choices," I said. "She took advantage of a dying man. She didn't just steal a store. She stole his dignity." Amanda whispered, "You don't know what it was like." "I know exactly what it was like," I replied. "Because I called him every week, and because he told me again and again that the store was mine, that it was ours." Richard looked at Amanda. "You told me he agreed." I thought I could convince him," she said, voice shaking. "But you didn't," I said. "So you controlled his access, changed his meds, signed his name, and now you're shocked that someone finally called you out." The mask cracked. Tears welled in Amanda's eyes, not from guilt, but from collapse. The unraveling of control. Richard backed away from her physically, like the legal fallout might be contagious. My dad stood, arms crossed. "This doesn't have to go public. It already is," I said. "Your lawyer will get the paperwork tomorrow." No one spoke. I gathered the papers back into the folder. "I'm done talking," I said. As I clicked the briefcase shut, Amanda sat down, deflated. "I just wanted something to be mine." "Grandpa wasn't something," I replied. "He was someone who trusted you, and you used that trust to rewrite his final wishes." For a long time, no one moved. Then Richard said quietly, "I need to call my lawyer." My dad followed. "Maybe we should all get counsel." My mom didn't speak. She just sat there, silent, red-eyed, wine untouched. I stepped away from the table and walked toward the door. No one tried to stop me. No more performances. No more lies. Behind me, the silence of a broken family sat heavy in the candle-lit room. I walked out without looking back, and for the first time in months, my chest didn't feel tight. My feet didn't hesitate. My hands didn't shake. I hadn't come for revenge. I came for the truth, and now they had to live with it. To live. In the weeks that followed, everything unraveled, just not for me. The district attorney moved fast. Within days, Amanda received a formal notice of investigation for elder abuse, financial exploitation, and undue influence. The amended will was frozen by the probate court while the case proceeded. Her law firm placed her on indefinite suspension pending the outcome. The press picked up the story quickly. Local headlines read, "Prominent attorney accused of manipulating dying grandfather for real estate deal." Meanwhile, Richard's company, Prestige Properties, lost 3 major investors within a week. His development plans stalled. Public records were re-examined, permit requests revoked, and within a month, Prestige filed for bankruptcy protection. Their so-called Prestige Corner never moved beyond the blueprint stage. Richard filed for divorce 2 weeks after that. The email he sent Amanda leaked cold, sterile, 2 paragraphs long. He blamed her entirely, claimed he was misled and unaware of the full legal exposure. His lawyers echoed that narrative. He moved out of the house before the first court hearing even took place. My parents tried to keep their distance from the scandal, but it was too late. Their silence, their complicity, their laughter at that dinner, it all came back to haunt them. They left voicemails, first angry, then sad, then pleading. I didn't answer. It wasn't revenge. I just didn't owe them anything anymore. 3 months after that dinner, the probate court ruled in my favor. The amended will was voided. Grandpa's original will, the one drafted years earlier when he was still healthy, still sharp, was reinstated. I became the legal owner of Carpenter's Corner. The morning I got the keys, I stood in front of the store for a long time before unlocking the door. The same creak greeted me just like when I was 10. The air smelled like old wood oil and the faintest trace of peppermint from the jar he always kept by the register. I didn't cry. Not right away. But when I stepped behind the counter and found the tiny photo of me and Grandpa still taped to the inside of the cash drawer, that's when the tears came. He'd kept it there. All these years. The first thing I did was gather the employees. Most of them had worked there for over a decade. A few had been there since before I was born. They looked nervous at first, like they weren't sure if they were about to be fired. I stood on the worn wooden steps near the back wall and told them plainly, "This place stays open. Your jobs are safe. And starting next week, we're expanding." They didn't cheer or clap. They just stood there, stunned, grateful, and some of them on the verge of tears. We upgraded the inventory system using the app I built. We launched a small online shop to serve customers beyond the county line. We created a weekend DIY series free workshops to teach kids and young homeowners how to use tools, fix things, build something with their hands. We even started a tool lending library, something Grandpa and I had once joked about years ago. A hammer doesn't have to be bought by everyone. Sometimes it just needs to be shared. The community came back in waves. People who'd stopped by the store for decades brought stories. Some had photos with Grandpa. One woman showed me a note he'd written to her father during a hard winter pay, "When you can. Your family comes first." He had taped a $10 bill to the bottom. That's the kind of man he was. And that's the legacy I chose to honor. Amanda took a plea deal. No prison time, but she lost her license to practice law. She moved out of state shortly after the court's ruling. I don't know where. I don't ask. We haven't spoken since. Richard rebranded under a new LLC name in another city trying to rebuild. He hasn't succeeded yet. My parents live quietly now. They've sent letters, one every few weeks, some apologizing, some trying to explain. I haven't replied. Maybe someday I will, but not yet. Some wounds don't close with words. They need time and space and silence. In California, BuildBridge runs smoothly. I still oversee the company, but I've stepped back from day to day. I split my time now between the life I built and the town I left behind. The store keeps me grounded. Sometimes after closing, I sit on the stool behind the counter, the lights off the fan slowly whirring overhead. I pull out Grandpa's voice recorder and hit play. I've memorized most of the entries now, but I listen anyway. My Brianna. She sees the world different. Not wrong, just newer. She's going to take this place farther than I ever could. He says it in that gravelly voice full of quiet pride, and I hold on to that. Because in the end, this wasn't about property, or money, or punishment. It was about a man who saw me when no one else did, who believed in me when even my own parents couldn't. It was about preserving that belief and proving it was real. The family I was born into betrayed me. But the one Grandpa helped me build the store, the team, the community, that's the one I choose now. That's the one worth fighting for. If you've ever had to stand up to your own family not out of anger, but because it was the right thing to do, then you're not alone. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight quietly with truth instead of noise. I'd love to hear your story. Drop it in the comments if you've ever had to choose integrity over blood. Tap that like button if this hit home, and don't forget to subscribe because stories like this one deserve to be told. And if someone you know is going through something similar, share this with them. Maybe they just need to know they're not crazy. They're just brave.